Dr. Nori, we should conduct some research on the trees by the side of the highways. While so many vehicles are bombarding them with pollutants, how are they able to endure it? If we can find out what property is giving them that strength, a human race at large can benefit further. Whose words were these? We will soon find out. World class institutions, world class learning. Manhattan is a very crowded place in New York. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center is situated there. Across from it lies New York Hospital. Both are world renowned institutions and housed in multiple buildings. Looking at them, my head had a spin. In that confused state of mind, I went into the reception area of New York Hospital, Cornell Medical Center, instead of that of MSK. Perhaps destiny wanted it that way. Although from there they guided me to MSK, I did not have any inkling that I was destined to hold top positions in both of these institutions. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center is not an ordinary organization. By then, it already had a long history of its own. This is the oldest and the largest private cancer center in the world. Initially, in 1884, it started as New York Cancer Hospital in the Manhattan area of New York. John Jacob Astor III and his wife Charlotte founded it. William B. Cole was working as an attending surgeon. He belonged to the first generation of doctors who tackled tumors with immunotherapy. In 1899, the hospital had become General Memorial Hospital. Its objective was to treat cancer and allied ailments. Professor James Irving from Cornell Medical College established collaboration with Memorial Hospital in 1910. An industrialist by the name of James Douglas in those days donated $1 lakh towards clinical research. Such funding provided for the lab required for the active evaluation of radium's role in further researches on radiotherapy as well as 20 beds. With the charity of Mr. Rockefeller, the first fellowship program started in the hospital in 1927. In 1931, the 900 kV X-ray tube was used in radiotherapy for cancer treatment. In the same year, Mr. James Irving became the president of the hospital. The prestigious Time magazine carried a story, Cancer Man Irving, with his picture on its cover. By the time he retired after 9 years, Memorial Hospital topped all the hospitals in the United States. While addressing the treatment of patients, it gained name and fame in clinical research and lab diagnostics. In 1934, John D. Rockefeller donated some land on York Avenue and after 2 years, $3 million to the hospital. From then onwards, the hospital was moved to a new location. In 1945, Alfred P. Sloan, the then chairman of General Motors, donated $4 million. The vice president of the same company, Mr. Kettering, came forward to support the research of the hospital. Thus, Sloan Kettering Institute for Cancer Research was established. After 3 years, Cornelius P. Roars became the director of the hospital. During World War II, he worked for the United States Army, helping to develop chemical weapons and set up research centers. Research on mustard gas, nitrogen mustard, led to developments for its use in chemotherapy at Sloan Kettering. Along with a few more clinicians, he also discovered a medicine called 6-MPA among his many other accomplishments. In brief, Memorial Hospital continued its journey ahead of others in cancer research in the 1950s and 60s, including pediatric oncology. So many donors, doctors, and researchers collaborated in that endeavor. The organization felt that it was not enough to merely treat cancer, but also necessary to provide mental fortitude to concerned patients, and hence started an exclusive department therefore. It was a pioneering initiative indeed. During treatment and after recovery also, experts would equip patients with a great deal of courage. In the early 70s, when the US declared war on cancer, 3 hospitals were declared as comprehensive cancer centers. Memorial Sloan Kettering was one of the 3. With the amalgamation of Memorial Hospital and Sloan Kettering Institute in 1980 was born Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Year after year, MSK is considered as the number 1 cancer center in the US. Thereafter, for the last 50 years, this organization has been progressing in all respects. As of now, about 1,000 doctors are working at MSK and about 400 types of cancers are being treated there. Every year, 6 lakh people avail themselves of treatment in the center. The number of researchers also runs into thousands, and there is no dearth of donors who support it. Fellowship. When I saw that organization and set my foot inside, I was not sure whether it was a dream or reality. Because that was the first time in my life I was seeing a world-renowned cancer institute of that stature. I decided to work hard, conduct top-notch research in cancer at this institute, and help cancer patients world over. The radiation oncology department of this reputed hospital, Memorial Sloan Kettering, was headed by a Chinese scientist and physician named Dr. Florence Xu as its chairperson. Her story is a very inspiring one. Dr. Xu graduated in medicine in 1942 from the National College of Shanghai. The same year, the Japanese occupied that area of her country. Hence, her college was shifted to another area called Chongqing. She did her training in radiology there for 3 years. After the Second World War, the Chinese government wanted to send some of its students abroad for higher studies. Having cleared the relevant exam, therefore, Dr. Xu and her husband came to the US in 1947. Thereafter, the Communist Revolution took China by storm and came into power. Because of these developments, Dr. Xu and her husband could not return to their country. She came to Memorial Sloan Kettering as a special fellow in January 1949 and worked there for the next 38 years. She rose to become the chair of the radiation department. After retirement from MSK, she continued to work there until she attained her 80th birthday. Dr. Xu interviewed me. 2.5 weeks later, in the first week of July 1976, I joined the Department of Radiation Oncology at MSK as a special fellow. Normally, residency is mandatory to obtain the fellowship, but as I had completed my MD in India, I was offered a fellowship directly. Otherwise, I would have had to complete 3 years residency training first. It was beneficial that I already had my MD. I would get a fellowship stipend of $600 per month. MSK also allocated an apartment for my stay. On the very first day of my commencing my duties, I didn't have any money. I would not get my fellowship stipend until the end of the month. I met a few people who were part of the Telugu diaspora and explained my predicament. They gave me $10 with which I could manage. After 3 months, my wife Subhadra and my son Satish came to the US. By then, my son was 8 months old. When I wanted to take him into my arms, he started crying as if he did not recognize me. It took a few days for him to get comfortable with me. For their journey and essential provisions for our home, I borrowed $1,000 from a Dr. Sripati and was able to repay him within the next 2 to 3 months. Bond worthier than gold. But what I could never repay, but make only a token gesture towards it, was what my mother did for me, in particular for my kith and kin in general. As I was the last child in the house, I always spent more time with my mother and observed firsthand the first personal sacrifices she made to help the family. One particular event disturbed me a lot. As briefly mentioned above, as we had no sources of income, she was concerned about how to pay the tuition fee for the education of one of my brothers. So, to pay the tuition fee, she decided to sell her gold bangles, the only jewelry she ever had, all through her life. This event had disturbed my mind throughout my education period. I was determined that in the future, when I would become employed, I would buy her a new pair of gold bangles with my first paycheck and present them to her. When I received my first month's salary from Memorial Sloan Kettering, I went to an Indian jewelry shop in New York and bought her a beautiful pair of gold bangles and presented them to her during my very first trip to India. She was so happy to wear them and showed them to all my relatives. I felt immensely happy and my eyes became wet with tears when that I had made good on my wish to make her wear gold bangles again. I went all the way to Hyderabad and adorned her hands with them, and with happiness I could see her on her face that day. Assets of millions of dollars simply fade away. She proudly told everyone, those who inquired, and also those who did not. My son Dattu brought these bangles for me from America. Frankly speaking, well, this is because he is launching on to uh, Dr. Frank Ellis. The author is saying, frankly speaking. I thought I told you the name of the gentleman who had given me his visiting card when I was working in M&J Cancer Hospital in Hyderabad and asked me to meet him when I visited the US. His name is Dr. Frank Ellis. He was the chairman of the Department of Radiation Oncology at Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. When I first joined MSK, people there were astonished to know that he had left his business card with me. It was not an ordinary thing, so their impression was that if such a highly placed man left his card with this young man, perhaps Dr. Ellis thought that radiation would be this young doctor's métier. In fact, Dr. Ellis was very powerful and had more credibility than the president of the institute itself. Dr. Ellis was from England. In 1943, when the first radiotherapy department was started at Royal London Hospital, he was its first director. After he retired in 1970 in his country, he was appointed as a visiting professor at both the University of Southern California and Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York. He was totally devoted to discovering the ideal dose of radiation that could be administered to eradicate malignant tumors without impacting healthy cells. He was responsible for determining the nominal standard dose. This paved the way for standardization of the dose across the hospitals internationally. He came to India in 1974. By then he was a consultant to the World Health Organization as well as to the International Atomic Energy Agency. He had come to Hyderabad to participate in an international conference on the innovative methods to be developed in the developing countries. That was when I was interested to take care of his delegation. That was the time when I made my presentation, which he saw and liked too. Hence, he left his business card with me, asking me to meet him when I would be in the US. When even visiting, forget working and settling there. At that time, the US was not even a remote dream for me. From my days of fellowship, he treated me very well and encouraged me. Although he was at the acme of his career, Dr. Ellis believed that every new patient was a new challenge. He didn't believe in the theory, same medicines and same treatment for all patients. He would treat each and every patient with special care. His illustrious life in medicine and research inspired many a student in training. Winning accolades and awards, he lived his 100 years of life to the fullest. He was an embodiment of enthusiasm, creativity, and immense love for humanity. This is rich with its meaning. Let me repeat. He was an embodiment of enthusiasm, creativity, and immense love for humanity. Three great qualities. Well, I suppose all the three go together. and they are defined together. They cannot be independent of each other. Well, of course, some might have just enthusiasm, might pick up creativity, but if they are self centered, then the last one is missing. But if all the three are together, some greatness is also quite nearby. That can be anticipated. He was a wonderful person. It's not hyperbole to call him the world leader in radiation therapy for cancer. He founded many organizations. His fame has been well entrenched by the Royal College of Radiologists through its introduction of annual speeches and a medal named after him. Once, I organized a party in his honor in New York and invited doctors and others closely known to both of us. By then he was 95. Another time while we were traveling by car, he said to me, Dr. Nori, we should conduct some research on the trees by the side of the highways. While so many vehicles are bombarding them with pollutants, how are they able to endure it? If we can find out what property is giving them the strength, the human race at large can benefit further. As a doctor and a human being, that was the noble concern he had for the human race. Well, I'm getting a strange idea. The trees around us, they have enthusiasm because they're growing. They're creative, yes. Who else can be more creative than a plant? And their love for human life is by far the greatest. No wonder this great doctor equates humanity with the trees. I was fortunate to be guided by such gurus and to spend many years in their august company. His life spanning from 1905 until 2006 was very productive, and he was active until very close to his death at the age of 100. The rise to the acme of my achievement in my professional name, fame, and progress can be largely attributed to him, and it was his business card that he gave me in Hyderabad that laid the initial path to glory. After my fellowship in the third year, I became an attending doctor. By 1979, I earned the certification, the accreditation of the American Board of Therapeutic Radiology, which is the New York state license. Later, I advanced to the next level as assistant attending and assistant professor of radiation oncology. Beginning as an assistant doctor, then an associate doctor, I thereafter became a professor. Meanwhile, my wife Subhadra also completed her residency and obtained a position. On October 27, 1980, my daughter was born as our second child, whom we named Priya. Taking care of both Satish and Priya while both of us were working made our lives very hectic and the time just flew. During this time, in 1980, my brother Ramatirtha came to New York during his return journey to India from Warsaw, where he went for some training course. He was the first visitor to my house in New York, and it was a very happy moment for our family.